trickle in, but thanks again. We're excited to have this at Stratford. We're in the new STEM wing here, and very exciting. My first time over here seeing the renovation, so I'm sure a lot of you have already been here, but it's exciting for those of us that haven't.
Do you want me to write
come over. Hey,
Yeah, that'd be great.
join us. You don't have chili.
We don't either.
Again, thanks everybody. So tonight we wanted to do a follow-up on, at least with the first part of the meeting, on the pathways discussion, and then talk a little bit about community engagement. We do have a guest speaker tonight for community engagement, I believe. Do we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, she's stuck in traffic. But
Okay, cool. We will have somebody. Yeah. First, on the pathways discussion, Chris is here to follow up. Do you want to just kind of like quick hash sort of the main points, and then we'll, what I thought we'd do is just any thoughts that have come up over the last week, any concerns, anything you heard from other folks, if you've taken this back to the schools, any questions for the district or the committee, and then we can kind of go from there. Do you have one before he kind of rehashes?
Kind of, it's a general thing,
Okay.
but it's related to pathways and general. I had a couple of serendipitous conversations this week with parents scattered around, and one thing that everybody brought up was confusion related to the choices. There were Warner parents, Dan Mills parents, Rosebank parents, and some of that kind of fleshed out was the communication from MNPS to parents about how to do it, what the options are, why there are options, and then what happens if I'm in the GPZ and I do a lottery, what does that mean? And people didn't seem to feel they were getting complete information or proper information. I don't know about that part, but they definitely didn't feel like they were being informed well enough, whatever that means in the end. And that also expanded a little bit to general communication from MNPS, in that we've recognized this at Inglewood, trying to communicate with our parents that, all of those standard ways of communication aren't reaching a lot of our parents. The folders, which are by far the most successful, but if you want feedback, it doesn't bring feedback as well. Call-outs with the mobile society we're in, phone numbers drop and pick up constantly. People change numbers just like anything else, and digital communication, online communication, with the amount of homes, although it's increasing. I mean, the mobile issue is part of that. You change phone numbers or carriers and you don't have the same internet service, and you don't have real internet service, and you don't know how to use the library or the school services for that purpose. There is certainly a group of parents in Nashville, citywide, that are getting left out of the communication on all issues. But when you throw in something that's really confusing, like the choice options and what all the website, the website we did this year was gorgeous and I think extremely functional. But I've had a personal computer for 20 years, so everything's really functional to me. And I just wonder. And I don't have any answers, but this was a theme from Lachlan to Dan Mills and Litton and Kirkpatrick and Warner, is the information that comes isn't as helpful as it could be. And then the ability, and then kind of looking at it from the outside, is everybody even getting the information? And I mean, obviously, with something as convoluted as choice can be, I mean, that's a big part of it. You know, if you don't know what your options are, how can you make a good choice?
Well, I'll start by saying that I understand and accept that the choice process is pretty complex. And so oftentimes while we do send out written communication, every parent in the district, if you have a student in metro schools and charter schools, regardless, everybody should have received an actual paper application. So this booklet is like, includes frequently asked questions, but I also acknowledge that it is complicated. And so for a lot of people to start to dig into that information, it's just a little much asking all of our parents to expect them to go through all those fine details. One thing I would say is that it was, I think, 3 years ago, roughly, when we transitioned away from the old magnet school. We had magnet schools, open enrollment, a bunch of forms, and we switched to a new process which combined everything. We now have some charter schools opting into this process where parents are now asked to prioritize their choices. And we have now incorporated more web presence, so you can apply online, you can see your results online, you can return your acceptance letters online. But the one thing that I've learned from working with the district is that those institutional changes take years to resonate into the community for parents that are used to one process, and then it changes. It takes a while for people to just become familiar all the way within our school district and within the community. We have a first choice fair where we meet with people in the fall, where we have families and we do presentations. But it's just difficult to do the amount of outreach that really is necessary. I encourage parents to call customer service if they have questions, because it's impossible to talk to one person and answer all their questions, because one parent's the way they need to access choice and their priorities and needs for their children is so drastically different from the next. And so to try to have a one-size-fits-all communication is really complicated. So it's better if that one parent would call customer service and we walk through them and try to help them, but it is challenging.
Can I piggyback on that? I think that when you any type of communication where you're expecting a response, if you get 10 to 15% back, you're doing good. I know that we dealt with that with PTOs and such, and just in parent base and such. I've noticed that there are so many methods of communication that sometimes it's a little overwhelming, and I know just looking through Facebook and watching the feed that if something is being constantly posted and there's a barrage, then eventually I don't see it anymore. It just kind of goes by the wayside. So making sure that the information that goes out via social media and other avenues is targeted and specific is a good idea. And I don't have any ideas on exactly how to do that, but I can say that to what Jay said, the conversations that I've had with people, and the phrase that keeps coming up is navigating the system. People have to learn to navigate the system, and that is easy for those of us who carry a laptop around 24/7. But for folks who don't, it can be a little burdensome. And I used to think, well, there's the public library and there's all these places that people can go to find this information, and you just realize over time that it's not as easy as it seems. I was downtown at the library today in the room with all the public computers, and it was packed.
And you have to get in line and you get a ticket.
And they're all that way.
They're all that way.
Inglewood Library.
When you go to the Inglewood, Madison. I mean, there's a waiting, list to get a computer, and you get like 20 minutes. And so if you don't know what you're doing when you go in, then you lose a little ground.
So when I came, I inherited the 2009 rezoning plan, and I came in January, and it had to be implemented the next fall for a few thousand people. And so what I asked Chris to do was a zero default contact list, where we literally had an active decision, questions and answers from every parent in the Pearl-Cohn cluster. and we pulled it off. We contacted everybody and had a conversation for anybody. We just didn't let people go to a default assignment plan. And I think that's really important. I hear what you're saying, and I know Janelle's working on a strategic communications plan now, and a number of people are working on simplifying this contact system because it is complicated. It's also complicated to change it and make it better.
Sure.
One thing that's important to note about if we change pathways, if we do some of the things that we're talking about here, is we have more than a year to communicate because we're talking about the fall of 16. And so you know, what I hope happens is if we do some of the things that we're talking about on pathways, the board does that and approves it now, and we have from now until next spring sometime to communicate with parents so that they can make informed decisions. And I think the system is getting, I think we're making some real good improvements with it as we go forward, but I understand what you're saying. It is complicated.
Could we recommend the zero default in this plan, you know, as a recommendation that we try to make sure we've contacted everybody since we have that long?
I think you can.
When
We
we
could-
beta test communication methods and such, do we, say I'm working on a website or something, I would go to, I'll use my wife as an example, and hand her the laptop and say, can you figure out what I need you to do? You know, if I tell you this is what I need the end result to be, can you figure out how to get there without me giving you any instruction? And I can make notes to figure out what tweaking needs to be done and everything. I know that a new website's rolled out and everything, and it was in beta form for a while. I don't know what testing process you go through when you're in beta form, whether it's a phone app or a website or anything like that. But anything where you can reach the folks who aren't necessarily engaging that avenue of communication to figure out if it's easy enough for them.
You know, honestly, Janelle, you might be better to answer that.
So I think that's a really good idea. And I mean, we did launch a new website this fall, and it was in progress when I got here. And I think it has simplified interaction on the website quite a bit. And we are in the process now of working with our existing communication vendors to have an app deployed that's going to make it, I think, even easier for parents to access information. And we know that a lot of families are more likely to have access on a mobile device than they are internet at home, or the ability to go to a library or something. So that should also help us communicate more with parents. But the process Dr. Register was speaking to earlier is I'm right now working on a strategic communications plan for the district. And we're in the information gathering phase, and I'm doing focus groups with, tomorrow morning actually, I'm doing a focus group with principals, I'm putting together a focus group with parents, a focus group with teachers. And so part of that is to find out from our audiences, really, and people who do the communications on behalf of the district, look at how can we do this better, how can we better serve our families. So I think that's a really good idea.
So I know that MNPS has a YouTube page where you have videos and such posted, and I have, it's been a long time since I've been there, but to what degree are there instructional videos that, say, PTO organizations could use in a meeting where they could, maybe walk parents through some of that stuff? We had meetings, years ago. We brought somebody in from MNPS to kind of go over a game plan, or this is how this is going to work or something. And that kind of stuff is good, except that people tend to kind of roll their eyes at it. So if you had something that you could throw on a screen, and we would try to do something at a PTO meeting where we took care of the business that needed to be taken care of, and then we spent 15 or 20 minutes learning something that families needed to learn, because once you get a group of people, once they've learned that, then those folks will talk and they'll kind of pass that information around, and it does take time. Eventually that kind of filters through. So I'm just wondering if there are any sort of instructional videos out there, or if that's something that when you're having these talks, maybe you could video and edit, and I know that's time and money. And I know all that. But.
I love that idea. I think it's a great idea. Jeannie Pupil-Walker, who will be here a little bit later, actually to talk about community engagement, does a lot of the PTO, the parent engagement side of our communications, and they and her team has just a menu of various trainings that they offer to schools, and they open up that menu to principals and say, you know, what kind of training, and I don't want to speak on Jeannie's behalf because she could talk about it way better than me, but she really offers up sort of this menu of what kind of trainings would your school benefit from, and certainly, you know, it's, there she is, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so
you-
John, if we can hold that, yeah, we'll have a big Q&A once she talks. I just wanted to, real quick though, talk, you know, just make sure we follow up on the pathways and give anyone a chance to kind of input. So just first, Maplewood cluster, not a lot of changes. Need for K through 12 program alignment was the big recommendation. Stratford cluster had the most changes. Inglewood continue to work with parents and school leadership to determine if the program should convert to STEM or STEAM, and maintain the feeder path into Lytton and then Stratford High School. Bailey, we talked about the big move, moving the middle school into the Stratford High School building, merge the 2 STEM programs into a 5 through 12 grade configuration. Middle tier grades would be in a separate part of the Stratford building, obviously, from the high school students. Rosebank, just adding the STEM program and feeding directly into the STEM Middle Academy at Stratford, which was Bailey. Kirkpatrick converting to the KIPP Charter School, which we've all heard about and talked about. With the feeder to KIPP Middle School, the zone pathway would still feed into the STEM Middle Academy at Stratford, which we formerly called Bailey. Warner, add the Padilla program with the guaranteed feeder path into East Padilla. The zone pathway would feed into the STEM Middle Academy at Stratford. And then the East Padilla, of course, also fairly big changes. East Middle School moved to the Bailey building and expand their capacity. East High School, expand the capacity for East High School by moving the middle school to the other building. Warner, add the pathway we talked about into East Middle School. And then possibly add other district Padilla programs as possible feeders outside of East Nashville, correct? So that was that's the summary of the big talk we had. So love to hear if there is any feedback. Chris is here again just for any questions, and we'll take it from there.
I actually kind of had a completely different idea for Inglewood. I mean, not changing pathway or anything, and not. I was thinking about like all this focus on STEAM. You know, we got STEAM out the bottom. Yeah, I mean it's everywhere. But okay, we have a new principal coming into Inglewood, and Inglewood's a priority school. Like 19%. We keep hearing that 19% proficiency rate. What room? And I'm glad Jay Steele's here. Do we have for? I wish Dr. Coverstone was here because I want to ask him. Do we have for like true innovation in that school? You know, take some new things and really work with that new principal, and really maybe since she's a former literacy coach, work on some major like literacy initiatives there. Not necessarily like a programming, but maybe like an arts and literacy academy, like Lockland was originally. I think weren't they originally that?
They were a literature design center when they opened.
Right.
When they converted with their school zone in the early part of 2000s, it was a literature
design school. I mean, I just think that for Inglewood, because Dan Mills is not a STEM or a STEAM. And Lytton, I think it has that programming in it, but it's pretty well-rounded. Is it not?
It's not official. It is very well-rounded. It's
Yeah.
it's not officially a STEM school, but there's a lot of there's STEM clubs and there
Yeah.
are.
It's like STEM light compared to
Yeah.
where Bailey is.
Yeah,
more
Where Bailey
full
is
STEM. Yeah.
heavy
Right.
on that. So just like what things could we do? Because we were talking about project-based learning and doing some really heavy, I don't know, since you're at Inglewood right now. I'm not a teacher. I don't know. I'm not an administrator, but just for that for Inglewood and doing, what room do we have to really pull some things that are working at charters and working in other schools that have turned around and really do some unique things.
Yeah,
at
give it a
Inglewood.
real refresh is what you're
And
saying.
I'm going to
just,
piggyback on that, is that
Oh,
when
yes.
I talked to some parents at Warner and teachers, they felt like Padilla really wasn't going to change much in their building. So, the Padilla, adding the Padilla program won't, it may attract some parents, but it won't really change what's happening there. And according to them, they're ready to be trailblazers.
Yeah.
They're ready to do something new. If we're the first ones to do it, let's do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, to do something innovative, whether it means changing everything or just starting within the building. And, you know, I've had talks about different languages at different grades. You know, if we already have 5 languages or 6 or 7 languages here at this school at Warner, why can't we teach a different language? Why can't we, you know, it may not be a full, you know, you don't learn a full language in a year, but you leave knowing basic words in 4 different languages from kindergarten to 4th grade. You know, that's something that I feel like maybe, you know, project-based learning, they're kind of already doing that. It's on a smaller level. You know, they will need some additional support in that, but they're looking to be innovative and be trailblazers, and I think that's what Amy is.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't feel like slapping a new label on a school is going to do anything unless we do some really, majorly.
Well, and from an educator standpoint, it's not going to do anything if it comes from outside either.
No, it's going to have to come
People
from
have to have buy-in, and I think it's a great idea to change the thought of what the makeup of is in Inglewood, but I think that Tracy, our new principal, would have to be a big part of that because, I mean, if she's truly going to be turning around the school, I mean, I think she's going to have to be in on that conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, working with her.
And you're right. She's, is very well versed in literacy, and I think that, you know, that of the ones that have been thrown out there, I know she would be open to that. But, you know, I think that that's something that not just the principal even. I mean, once you get your core group of people, your leadership team, I mean, if you have buy-in, you can soar, and if you don't,
and what's great,
it's just going to be a sign on the wall.
It's so much like what I've heard of charters is that the principal has so much autonomy to run that school, and with the teachers, and they're allowed to do very innovative things. And can we do that at Inglewood?
Is there? I mean, is the district stopping it at this point? I'm just wondering. I mean, to me, it seems like I think everyone kind of agrees that the label is more of something on paper that doesn't always change as far as the curriculum. But I don't see what's needed at the district level to enable that to happen. It seems like that power already rests within the.
What we're doing is increasing autonomy, and that's a big move so that schools and school teams can decide that. Jay, you have some comments?
Yeah, so when your principals do have autonomy, I expect the new principal to Inglewood and the principal at Warner and all the principals to come in and design with their leadership team something creative, innovative within the vision of the school district, focused on personalized learning for kids. When you think of STEM, I don't want you to think it's on steroids here, because this is an engineering, you're in an engineering and a Vanderbilt science lab and stuff and a biotech lab. But at the younger grades, it's really about the approach. It's inquiry-based. It is project-based learning, but it's also teaching them the STEM design, which is really, it's all inquiry-based. So it really doesn't matter what the theme is, as long as it's project-based, it's inquiry-based, and kids are able to thrive and work to their highest level within that project format. So think of it that way. I mean, if you go into STEM prep charter school, you're not going to see science labs like you see here. It's an approach. So it's really not them in a science lab. It's the approach every teacher takes to embed that theme into their lessons through an inquiry project-based approach.
I don't think that's translated to, not even to parents or the community, but that's not translated to Metro employees. They don't know that STEM is an approach and not, a look. Like, STEM doesn't look a certain way. It is a method and approach in which you.
Right.
But that would make sense why we don't see it at Lytton, is it's more of the approach. It's not as, and Bailey's a little more hands-on with the labs.
So at Lytton, it is embedded in every single class, and they have projects that, they have different themes at each grade level. So I know environmental, one of the grade levels is doing environmental, might be 6th grade, and they're studying the drainage off of that front yard in front of Lytton that floods. So they're working with engineers to redesign that space and turn it into an outdoor classroom. So they're taking that environmental approach, where one of the other grade levels is doing more of a space approach with shooting rockets and measuring the trajectory and stuff. So it looks different. If you go into Hattie Cotton Elementary, where Vanderbilt, the scientists that are working with the teachers there, it is an inquiry approach. They do have science labs. They have one science lab in the building, just like, and they have scientists in the classroom, same as they have at Lytton. But it's really embedded into everybody's subject throughout the building. So it's not you all go to one lab and do STEM and then go back to your other subjects.
So I agree with what you're saying. I think that if it's just thematic and it's an approach, I don't think that that's being translated well into the community, because I think people see a Paideia school and think, I don't want to do Paideia, I want to do STEM, or I want to do this, or and they're, because we've labeled it, instead of just saying this is an elementary school with an amazing curriculum, you know, we've put tags on it, so people buy into those tags or what they think those tags are. Now my kids are at Lytton, and Lytton is an amazing school, you know, and I love the idea of project-based learning. I think project-based learning is an invitation to community to join in, you know, on several levels, given the opportunity. But I think that, one, I'm not sure that schools even at the, maybe they do, the principals know that they really have the ability to go in and design what they want.
I would agree with you on that. I would say at the elementary level, the high school principals have run with it. They've been doing it for 4 years. They run their schools. I don't interfere with them. I just hold them accountable. Middle schools are in their second year of that approach, and Tracy Bruno is thriving with it at Lytton. Elementaries are a little more, this is the first year that they've been perceived to have that autonomy, because we changed leadership at the district level for elementary, and some of them are now starting to take advantage of that and test it a little bit, but there's still some apprehension there. Some of them don't think they can do things, or they have to ask permission. So we've been working with the elementary principals to take risk. We're going to reward you for that. It's okay. If it fails, move on. But at least you tried something innovative and creative and something different. It's a process. I think the elementary principals have, I have to choose my words carefully because I'm not trying to put people down, but they have not been allowed to be creative and innovative. And now that they have that autonomy, the new principals that we've brought in have that, and they feel it, and they're running with it. The people who have been here for a while have to feel more comfortable and safe in that environment, that they won't get fired or criticized or something, but it's evolving.
Yeah, that has been huge, I think.
Is Churchwell an example of one that's using the theme well, or at least use it,
I would say this year,
integrating?
Bringing in Trelawney Lane, the principal there, she experienced it. She was an assistant principal at JFK, and she understood project-based and continuous improvement. We put her at Churchwell this year. She's running with it. She has full autonomy to do what she needs to do.
They seem to be extremely creative in what they're presenting the kids as doing on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And I expect them to, like Buena Vista is another example of using technology and using multi-classroom leaders and regrouping of kids in a different way than anybody else is doing. We encourage that.
And she's had a lot of autonomy at Buena Vista for a few years. I kind of left last week's meeting frustrated because the quality and sort of high expectations has been absent from the pathways discussion. And so I do think there's limits to the autonomy that were given to the principals. For instance, I know that Valor and JT Moore are trying to work together to create some sort of sister school kind of scenario, but they'd have to align school calendars, which gets really tricky because of unions and buses. I mean, there's hard dollars that make that difficult, but it's not like we have full autonomy at Inglewood to say, we want to do school on Saturdays to help catch these kids up in the same way that charters do. So I'm curious, how can we shift this discussion, towards how do we make sure that we have all quality choices in East Nashville, and that we're not talking about, district-wide, less than half the kids in 5th through 8th grade are on grade level in reading and math, and that's not okay. And so if we're gonna spend all this time and we have all this parent involvement and all this attention on East Nashville, how can we set that bar to where we're talking about something substantially higher? how can we get to where 75% of the kids in East Nashville are in grade level? And start the discussion there, 80, 90. Like, let's set a high bar and then say, what does it take to get there? Instead of like saying, how can we move these deck chairs around and how's that going to impact, you know, the way the ship is floating? So I left last week frustrated, and that's.
I think that's an instructional issue, and as we said before, I think principals are going to have to buy in on changing instruction and how they promote instruction within their building, what kind of professional development they are willing to offer or present to their staff, and the staff is going to have to be on board with changing instruction. You know, at some point it's going to have to stop being a closed door instruction. You know, you're going to have to open your door and allow people to come in and say, okay, this may be working here, but it's not working here. I'm talking to literacy coaches, you know, and they're saying, or reading coaches, they're saying, I'm coming in and I'm doing this, you know, I'm doing this strategy, this approach where I'm, you know, I demonstrate it, we do it together, then you do it then the teacher does it on their own. But guess what? The teacher's not continuing to do that.
But that again goes back to leadership and
I think
how we're responding as leaders within the schools and how we're holding ourselves accountable for the instruction within our schools and our classes, and the type of feedback that we're offering teachers too, because you want good teachers to continue to grow and to stay within your school, right? So in order to address quality education, we have to be not just visible, you know, people obviously, the principal needs to be visible. The principal needs to be proactive and always providing professional development, feedback to teachers that will grow them, and monitor what's going on in the school. You know, back a long time ago, people say, well, the principal is in the office. The principal should never be in the office. We always should have our eyes on the instructional practices in the school and changing. And as Jay said, if it's not working, if your hands are in it and on it, you know it's not working, and you can change it and you can be more innovative. We do have autonomy, I believe, and part of that could be coming from the high school and having run a freshman academy and now being a middle school principal. I feel the autonomy, but I feel the accountability too, because it's a great responsibility to have to move students who are behind. They are. And you want them to be on grade level, but you have to have that focus. You know, literacy is a focus here for the students in East Nashville. You know, we have to start there and work there and put in processes, I don't want to say programs, but processes in place that will make sure that students are moving. So it starts with leadership.
And it's a very fundamental process to do what you're talking about, Jackson, and I'll say it a little different way. There are two key fundamental components, foundational components: leadership and quality of teachers. And if you look at what we're doing with the priority plan that we're approaching now, it's to recruit great teachers and to recruit great leaders in two steps. Leaders first. We've had every one of the principals has had to reapply, and they've been selected. And we've hired people from outside, like the principal coming to Inglewood. And then those leaders work to select a faculty that wants to be there. We are zero default on keeping subpar performers in all schools. You build on that, and then you talk about themes, and you talk about, I'm an elementary educator. What we're really talking about at elementary schools is center-based learning. And that's been around for a while. Although center-based learning is much more sophisticated now than it was years ago when it first started. We're talking about differentiated instruction that's tailor-made and personalized for each child, using the technology, program, the training that we have for teachers. It's a continuous progress work. And we want children actively engaged in elementary schools. We can add a foreign language. You know, Padea's got a foreign language. Two components to Padea: foreign language and Socratic seminar. Good lawyers the best training they can get in public school is to go through a Padea school and participate in Socratic seminar for years. The pathway thing is a way, it's a response to what we heard a lot of parents saying initially in the fall, but it's also creating a stability and giving some guarantees that we can't do everywhere. You know, we've got people in West Nashville now talking about ways to get a guaranteed pathway from elementary school into middle school into high school. That's really hard to do there. But one thing that I've had Chris working on is to look at what happens if we do what we're talking about with the pathways here. And we have the capacity in East Nashville to guarantee pathways, K-12. Right? You want to talk about that a minute? But we can do that. And we can, if we change the capacity at East, then we can guarantee parents the opportunity to stay elementary to middle to high school if they choose to. But you're not you're not locked in. If you want to go a different way, if you want to apply to a magnet school, if you want to jump from East to all of a sudden in 7th or 8th grade, your child falls in love with science and wants to get into biology, then they'll be able to flip into Stratford High School, into the STEM school. So I think there's a great deal of flexibility here and some sophisticated.
A lot of good choices.
I have a quick question. How, if your child decide they want to flip, they want to go from East to Stratford, how do you ensure that they are getting the same level of instruction from one to the other, from one school to, like, how do you make sure that, you know, if I take my child from 5th grade at this middle school to 5th grade at another middle school, that she's gonna not be behind or ahead by...
If it's done right.
Okay.
It's just basically standards and academic core curriculum. You have the same standards regardless of the thing. You still learn math. Mm-hmm. You still learn the same principles. And you still have to have that strong literacy component. A part of our strategic plan, I'll talk about middle school just a minute, and one that I think that I'm, you know, I hate I'm not going to be here to see it finished, but I know that Jay will finish it and other people will finish it, is we want every middle school child to be engaged in something that's a passion to them beyond just academics. And that means that, and we've got the capacity to do this. We're getting really close. So if you want to play music, if you want to learn how to play an instrument, you can do it. Or if you want to study art, if you want to do visual arts, then we've got the capacity to provide that. Or if you want to be involved in athletics, we need an intramural program that lets everybody play that wants to play. And so you know, we want, middle school kids are unique. Right? Unique. I think that's the best word for it. But let's get them involved in something that they really care about and they're passionate about, every one of them. And we've got the capacity to provide that, don't we, Jay?
At every middle school.
At every middle school. That's right.
Because that's where you lose a lot of kids.
Oh,
at
yeah.
Middle school.
Yeah. So you know, so look at what the mayor's done with Music Makes Us and what we've done with that. And, you know, the expensive piece there are the teachers. And we've got a lot of the teachers in place now, and this is the only place I know, certainly the only urban school system I know, where we're getting really close to saying any child in this school district can learn how to play a musical instrument, and we'll put it in their hands and it doesn't cost them anything, which is really important.
Let me add on to that. One of the things we're just now starting to scratch the surface, and Hunters Lane did this well, Apollo Middle School does it well, and Buena Vista does it well, is blended learning. Where kids, we have a plan that 30% of the elementary curriculum should be taught in a blended approach, and 50% of middle and 70% in high school. We've got a long way to go to get there, but what that means is kids have access 24/7 to the curriculum, have access online, and we know a lot of our kids don't have that at home, so we have to build that time into the school. But if an elementary or a middle school truly goes blended, you will see a different approach. It will be so personalized for the kids in that building that they can excel, they can remediate all the time, in and out, in programs like iReady, Blackboard. We're expanding Blackboard down to 5th grade next year. So we're buying, well, if the budget goes through. We are expanding that capacity for all of our high school kids that take blended courses online, now for all of our middle school. So that's a retraining of teachers how to access and incorporate learning technology, instructional technology into the program, and kids having access outside the building. So that announcement with Comcast this last few days, that's important.
You mean Google?
Google Fiber.
Well,
Yeah.
Comcast made an announcement also that everybody will have some type of internet access free in this city at some point. If we can get there, then that's going to, blended learning will blow up. Sue Kessler, principal at Hunters Lane, was brought to Washington, D.C. In the last few days to testify before the Senate panel because she is a fully blended high school, one of the only one in the entire country. So, and she can do that at Hunters Lane. We can do that at Inglewood. We can do that at Warner. We can do that here at Stratford.
I tend to be somewhat negative, but hearing about the increased principal autonomy and then the weighted budget that they're now going to, I think that's going to be great for, because some kids don't need as much as other kids do. So if the principals and the teachers have that autonomy to focus more, on certain.
How many of our schools in East Nashville are part of the extended learning, with either a longer school day or longer school year in general? Do we know that? I'm just curious how many. I know we almost were part of that. We put it on hold, but how many of our schools are either getting a longer school day or a longer calendar?
And if you think we need it, I'd like to hear it. And we want to pay. We want to pay if we've got some lower ones.
The one variable that, if you have kids that are behind, we need more time. More time on task, more practice, more hours. Everyone, if Jackson's faster than me in running, I'm gonna need more hours to catch up. So that's a variable that it would. Yeah. What I'm saying, I think the time on task. I think if we could look at that possibly for our elementary schools, and then even the middle school level.
If we can get I'd love to get a comment on that, just since you're asking.
And at Dane Mills, we have this achievement gap. I'm wondering, it's considered a quality school, but we still have these kids that aren't being. What can we do? What can we do in those schools?
Yeah, I think we have. They're called enhanced option schools. I think we have 4 in East Nashville. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah. Kirkpatrick is one that's going through conversion. So an enhanced option school is one that typically has lower pupil-teacher ratios, and they also have an extended school day. But with autonomy and budget autonomy, things may even be more flexible there in the long run. But Kirkpatrick, Warner's an enhanced option, Glenn and Caldwell. But Schwab is not termed an enhanced option, but Schwab has the similar resources associated with it.
So it's enhanced options now is, Chris was getting close to this, that they are, that's a part of a desegregation plan. It's got some age on it. They're cookie cutter models. They pretty much all do it the same way. They've got some flexibility there. I think what with a weighted student funding formula and school improvement grants, you ought to be able to do that with greater flexibility than just following a cookie cutter model.
And Jared, I'm going to say,
and that should be a strategy that you and your school have an option to do and have the resources to do.
And I'm going to say that Warner is enhanced option, and this past year, my daughter has gotten great enrichment because she came in a little bit higher. So like this week, they're doing for her enrichment. Other kids are doing interventions, like working on, and she's doing a DNA slideshow, kind of thing. Which is funny because we watched Genealogy Roadshow, and she was like, "I know what DNA is," which is great. And then today, I got a phone call from some members of a committee at Warner, and they are, I think, proposing a new option where they're going to kind of switch their scheduling a little bit, and they've asked some community members and partners and family members who have like special talents, or they have jobs that they like. If you're a crafter or a sewer, they've asked us to come in and have a meeting, and we're going to offer those particular services to Warner during that particular. So they'll be doing intervention things. Some teachers will be working together, common planning time, and parents or community leaders who are approved after the kind of like an interest meeting, will be able to work with a small group of kids to do like certain things that may, enhance or enrich their time at school, because they do stay till 3:45, and some of them are
From 8 to 3:45? Or?
yes, 8 to 3:45.
Did that answer? I mean, we have a few, obviously.
Well, I just think, even if we looked at like the goal of like increasing the amount of kids that are on grade level in math and reading, adding more time into calendars, into school calendars for the schools that need it the most, I think would help with the equity issue. I think like if there's an extra hour a day that they can be in a safe environment where they're reading, getting all caught up and have that extra, a lot of times if you ask teachers, even at the elementary level, like, are they reading on their own? Like, we don't have the time. Like, there's so much to cover, and so having an extra hour in the day, I don't know, budgeting, all that kind of stuff, or if we want to look summertime, like a boot camp type thing where we have a 3 or 4 week summer program for kids who we identify that are below grade level, that, hey, East Nashville has these 2 or 3 or 4 different sites for the summer where kids can go and get caught up and be really serious about, hey, telling families that your child's not where he needs to be. Let's do what we can do to help get them there. And if we have different things, if it's Saturdays, if it's adding an hour to the day, if it's adding 3 or 4 weeks in the summertime,
I feel like KIP used to do that, right? I don't know if they still do, but did they not
Bailey does.
have a similar
Didn't
program?
Ray of Hope do that for kids at Glenn? And that's how Glenn has really improved, is what I think Scott Davis was telling me about. Sorry.
I think part of it too is having that honest conversation of your kids below, and hey, here's how we catch them up. But then also we have to put teeth on that. If they don't want to catch up, like they're gonna have to do this grade again. And I think that we push kids on and we say you're in 7th grade, and they're not in 7th grade. They're in 5th grade, but they're slow. But they're in 5th grade with other 7th graders who are like, it's hurting.
So
everybody.
does weighted funding and SIG help with these kind of issues? Is the question.
Both. School-based budgeting and weighted student funding formula, and that does have a price tag.
And I think that's
We want to hear it. We want to hear that.
that really is like
important.
how parents would want to choose. Like, we would want to choose, based on, I think my child needs more time, and rather than, I don't know if this is a great school. Like, we would want to choose based on those type of options. Like, the option is, my daughter needs additional time, at school. So I'm going to look at the enhanced option schools instead of I'm looking at a school based on which one is sound, academically sound, and which one's not based on test scores. Like, I think things like enhanced option, or this one has, community partners coming inside of, do I want my child, part of a community based? Do I want them enhanced to option? Do I want them on a traditional schedule? Like, I want them to come home at 2:30. So I'm choosing, but they're all quality, it's all quality education.
But when you put that in a school, when you put that in a school, is it across the board? If this school is enhanced option and it goes till 4 o'clock, does it go to 4 o'clock for everybody?
That's the way it currently
And then
works.
then the ones who are able, you add the extensions, and you have the opportunities for enrichment, like you're talking. For the ones who are already, you're on grade level, so your needs are a little bit different. Now you have a chance to really express yourselves and work on, the things that they enjoy, and you get to do both. But you're
And the standards let you go deeper.
Yeah.
Those kids go deeper while other kids are still getting.
What's the participation level? And I know we're kind of winding down on the intercession thing, but at the height of the intercession process, the second year in or so, what was the participation on that, and how much?
It was several thousand students, but a small percentage. And what really hurt us with that was we were counting on federal money to do that. We implemented the calendar, and the federal money was cut. We're down about $30 million a year on federal money now, and so we lost a lot of our the money that we would have applied to that.
But
it's a good idea.
But having those
changed the
kids
calendar.
in there who needed that help,
Yeah.
what was the success rate?
It was we had successes and we had mediocre. Honestly, we didn't have time to implement it and make it right.
Yeah.
But until the funding just undermined the.
It's still
approach.
happening this year, right? It's like
Yeah,
3 days.
yeah.
this
I think
year, so.
when you
Some
give
schools
it,
have done
I think it was
great
like
with it.
I think it was too optional. like,
Yeah.
it was too optional, and then so it just turned into like
as if you needed extra help.
but
rather
as opposed to, I think that it would be mandatory, like.
I'll say historically with the enhanced options, now they're currently an extended day. So the entire school hours are extended. So many of the schools in East Nashville don't even need transportation because they're so tight. But if there is, the school buses don't run till that extended time. But previous to that, they actually extended the school year. So I forget the number of days, maybe 20 days. So it was a regular school day, but a longer year. The problem there was the optional aspect of that, where you had because the entire district calendar was over. It wasn't necessarily like mandatory that everybody had to come to school, and so you didn't have as much participation. And that was a while back. And then that was the shift to say, well, since we didn't have the participation, we needed to go to an extended year. That's not to say that now through autonomy and leadership at the school, they might say we need to start the year earlier or get our staff together sooner or other. There's so many ways to look at it, you know?
So I want to go back, I'm going to interrupt because I want to go back to the question that Jackson asked, which is a critical question. And I want to answer it a different way. We can create structures, and we've created structure in high school that's institutionalized now, and we do it better than anybody else. We can organize differently and create those structures, but the other piece of that is what happens in classrooms. And if you don't change behavior in classrooms, if you don't attend to quality instruction in classrooms, the structures don't matter. I mean, literally, they don't matter. And so, Jackson, what we have to do is look at what's a structure that works and fits, but then we got to make sure that from my point of view, my 5,500 classrooms are changing how they teach and how they're interacting with kids. And I think that's what we're talking about. Now, a lot of the priority planning is how do we change instruction in classrooms? And I think we're making some inroads. I believe we are. We're holding her accountable for what's happening in every classroom. We're doing things like professional development. Now, and I got a new figure this week because I gave a speech about it. 97% of our teachers have been through a training program and are considered competent. They pass competency to use technology to differentiate instruction, to use technology as a tool to change the way they teach in classrooms. And I know it's not perfect, but to have 97% of 5,500 teachers that have passed the competency and been given a laptop is huge. And I just walked through these classrooms and I saw laptop carts in every one of them. So I think that's the big answer to what you're saying.
But let me push on you just a little bit here, Dr. Register. And so, we're giving autonomy to the principals, but there's limits to that. And there's some accountability without authority there. I was principal for a day at a high school. I'll leave it unnamed. We were walking through the halls. There was a classroom that was completely unruly. I have a staff of 40 myself. I walked in that classroom with the principal and could see right away that teacher did not have control over that classroom. We were able to have a conversation about it afterwards, and I said, so, that's not working. He said, no, it's not. We're going to do an improvement plan at the semester, and if we're not able to improve it at the end of the year, then we'll recommend him not for renewal, right? But that takes a long time, and really when we're talking about so many kids being behind, and it's not, there are a ton of great teachers in every school, but there are also ineffective teachers in this district that you can walk in and spot right away. And it takes too long to deselect teachers. I know we're trying to select great leaders and great teachers, but it takes too long for principals, especially at schools that are not doing well, to deselect teachers that they know need to go. And I know at Inglewood, that was part of, that to some degree hamstringed Miss Mickle in her first years. And we've changed some of that, and we've made it to where it's shorter, it takes 1 year instead of 2, but I still think 1 year is too long. And if we were going to make recommendations to this committee, that's one I'd love to see us make. Give principals at priority schools the ability to deselect teachers right away.
Yeah, we have right leader, autonomy, accountable. We're holding them accountable. You're saying more accountable on the teacher end, and able to get rid of a bad teacher.
I'm going to push time too, because I would say say the schools that are already doing well, we're assuming their teachers are good, right? Obviously great teachers at the schools that are doing well. So then if you keep every variable the same, and then you have our kids, good teachers too, and you keep those the same, how are they going to catch up?
Absolutely.
So you're assuming like they're already getting good education, like schools that have these wait lists, right? They're doing really well. If like the percentage of kids proficient in advanced is much higher. So like the only way for them to catch up would be more time. I think, like, honestly, the only way if you're behind is more time. So I think some way to build that into the calendars or something, I think that that would be something I think we can look into.
I'm hearing it. Yep.
To do.
Absolutely. We've got to get to our guest speaker here in a second, but thank you for helping unpack some more things. I'm hearing that everyone's generally okay with the sort of, pathway plan that we have. I haven't heard of any complaints or anything. I know that's the deck chair part. We've got a lot of other things underneath that we need to be doing and recommending as well. So Janelle's going to introduce the speaker, though, and we can talk a little bit more about community engagement, and we'll go take Q&A after she speaks.
Let me interject.
Or was Hank going to do?
So a lot of what you are talking about, Jenny will talk about with being involved in the individual safe planning and how you can get involved in individual schools to help engage the parents around that. So we'll come back to that as well.
Yeah. Jeannie and I are going to talk about two different types of community engagement tonight. So if the group is feeling good about the pathway recommendations, what I just wanted to have a conversation tonight about is sort of how do we move those recommendations forward to get some more community engagement before it would go to the board. What I'm proposing is just a pretty simple community engagement plan where we would send out just a written notification to each of the schools in the Stratford and Maplewood clusters explaining what the changes are that are being recommended, specifically how it would impact that school and any of the feeder schools that they would be aligned to, and invite parents to 2 community meetings, and we could hold one here at Stratford and one at East. And that would be how I would suggest we would move forward, but I would certainly like to ask what everyone's thoughts are on that. I think it would be great for the committee to really present. I mean, Chris could be there to assist, of course, and but for this to be, the committee presenting these recommendations to the communities to solicit additional input. Me and my staff would certainly help organizing the meeting and promoting the meeting, but at both meetings. But tell me what you think about that as a next step.
I think that if you have a meeting, I think that's fine. Make sure you show parents, like have it, I know the building's all being renovated, but as close to that kind of separate wing as possible, because that's a big concern that I hear. It's just parents, oh gosh, it's going to be with high schoolers, my 5th grader's going to be with high schoolers. So if they can visualize, that needs to be done.
I don't know that I would pitch it as this is what we're recommending. This is an idea that's on the table that we're looking at, and we want their input.
Okay.
And I think that we need to, I know a lot of us are talking to people at coffee shops and principals and parents and teachers and just trying to get an idea. And I think that the pathway discussion, the reason it's important is because it's emotional for people. It's once you have that set, then the other stuff is a little bit easier to put into place. And I think that absolutely holding people accountable, and I think that being able to deselect and being able to I think all that stuff is vital. But this is emotional, and this is going to have some impact. So we just want to make sure that when we get it out there, that people know that there's going to be a change in some capacity.
I think being as clear up front about what is open for feedback and what is set, like just creating those boundaries to clarify. If we learned anything from October on, I think that if that lesson wasn't learned, I sure hope, we weren't paying attention. So, it is okay that the district has, I don't know, I mean, it's up to the district how much you want it is open for suggestion, completely wipe this and come up with something new if that's what people advocate for, or if you're not prepared to do that, then you need to be clear from the get-go that, this is what's happening, this is how we're explaining it to you, versus...
I think we tell them I think we explain it as we're a very broad represented East Nashville group, and we're going to come with recommendations, suggested recommendations. We're open to feedback. We're certainly, it's not in stone, and then but these are our ideas, and then just kind of bounce it back and forth, you know.
And I think that's where you have to be careful, because once people see it on paper or on a diagram, it's set in
Right.
stone to them.
Right.
And so we have to make sure that when we communicate that this is a plan and it's a process that we're looking at. That
Yeah,
they
that was
understand.
Plan
that was
might
the,
not be
that was the
the
first that was the first question.
Yeah.
That was the first question I got when today it was some Dan Mills parents who asked me, or they were saying something and I butted in and they said, "Oh, I've seen you on Channel 3." And the very first question they said, "So is Bailey moving to Stratford?"
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just right out of the box, no context. They just remember seeing the three principals sitting next to each other from the last meeting and heard the words Bailey in Stratford, and we're like, how? Why?
Can I just reiterate what an opportunity this is? We have parents in East Nashville watching Channel 3. We have a great opportunity here to do something cool and important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, our broadcasting team at Bailey has been talking about that as well. And I'm not too sure if anyone is familiar, but Bailey has a Bailey Beat. And it's with, it was created by the students and ran by the students. And so they are concerned about that as well, because a lot of them are sixth graders and seventh graders that are participating. And so they're interested and want to know more. So I think we do need to be clear that these are recommendations and suggestions, and then also some of the faculty are wondering about the change as well and would like to be able to participate in a discussion.
How do they feel about it, the students?
Honestly, student-wise, I mean, kids would tell you numerous things of like where they want to go.
Yeah.
If you were to talk to the students, a lot of the students are not choosing Stratford. The high schools that they are looking at are McGavick and Pearl. And a lot of it, they're focused more so with business, or they're looking more so to expand on technology is what they're looking at. But so moving it to Stratford, they have their own, I guess, experiences or whatever about Stratford, so that's not really a good look at them. And for the parents, some are kind of fretful about having younger students with high school students, so that's like a big concern. Others were kind of confused with the conversation with the principals of not having Bailey faculty there. A lot of the leaders, the teacher leadership that they have at Bailey are rated 4 or 5 teachers, and they have truly changed the culture there and are improving. And so for them not to continue with their students is kind of like, it's an emotional deal for them. So it's a lot of emotions that's kind of going on, and Bailey has went through a lot of transition, so it's like another change. So it's a lot of emotion with that, and so they would like the opportunity to speak.
Are you saying because Bailey leadership wouldn't be in the proposed Stratford?
Yeah, because from what like Dr. Steele, some of the teachers, not really gonna put anyone just like name, but there are a few that have went above and beyond at Bailey, and to see them not be able to follow through like the Stratford has been kind of disheartening to them. And so some of the parents, I haven't really dealt with too much of anyone not really buying into the idea. It's kind of like getting familiar or going through like that whole change. And then I'm not too sure what the conversations with the kids, with their parents have been, since the children will say they're going to other, like they're not actually going into their feeder, which is Stratford. They're choosing other schools, so it's kind of like, okay.
So just as a hypothetical, if in that meeting and it was the tour, and here's where, you know, the middle school would be at Stratford, and this is the room that would be a great room for the Beat, and this is a great room that would be for, you know, the robotics club or whatever. I mean, the things that are positive at Bailey, that there's an identity. I mean, if it seemed like there was some continuity, do you think that would help?
I believe so. And with Bailey, I mean, we are strong with our robotics and with like the Bailey Beat, but there's also a lot of approach and there's different ways that each teacher, like they all have their own kind of vision. And like with Dr. Sawyer, he let them be innovative as they want. And it's like they can, like the world is like theirs, and it's amazing how each teacher does something extremely different, but they all have that same standard and that same curriculum to approach it, and how they actually, each grade level, are able to participate and learn with the higher grades there. So it is really like a community and a brotherly and sisterly kind of like love there. I don't think it would really be too much of an issue if everything seems to continue here, and I've heard great things about Stratford. I don't have a high schooler here yet, but I think it's more so of the faculty. The parents have built a relationship and seen with newer teachers there, because it was, some emotions when we deselected teachers at Bailey and have new teachers to come in, but when they saw the change and how things have improved, and I'm speaking personally for myself because my daughter has been there since 5th grade, and you do have upcoming middle schoolers, it's like, oh, okay, now I have to get reacquainted with another teacher and see how that go. And so that's kind of like the issue there. So I think it will all work out, but it's just let them be able to really come in and discuss and see for themselves, because like having things on paper and just with us being aired on like Channel 3 it's like, okay, so this is happening. And so it's like, well, no, we're, still discussing it, but the conversation is going on, and even with the kids. So it's amazing just with me walking through today, and they're like, well, 2016, we're going to be at Stratford. And it's like, well, it's not set. So
well, I think that generally, I'm just going to say this, and then we're going to let Jenny talk. But just generally, as a committee, I hope that we can ensure our constituencies that that these are recommendations, and that number one, this is really, if you've never seen your voice be heard, this is how it is. You need to know who's speaking for you, and if you have ideas, that they come forward to whoever you're speaking with. If you see John or Jay at the playground, then you need to speak to them, because whatever you speak to them, your ideas, your voice is going to come back here. And if we don't get a voice from a group, I hate to come to this table and not see a Maplewood person at the table. There's nobody here representing the cluster. Oh.
High school, maybe not the high school.
Yeah, she doesn't really. When I mean the cluster, she's here as a member of Metro. She works for Metro and she's doing what she needs to do. But there's, let's look at the ratio. If we look at it that way, we have one Maplewood cluster member compared to 5 or 6 other Stratford cluster members who are voicing their opinions for our cluster. So let's ensure, number one, that our constituencies know that these are recommendations, this is the voice being heard, that these things aren't set in stone. We're able to do that because we see them on a daily basis. And that they use the voice that they have to make sure that, their issues and ideas are presented.
Yeah, we're counting on everybody to filter back in and say, hey, we're going to have big community meetings, we're going to come, it's going to be welcoming, we're going to be very warm and welcoming, and we're going to explain our recommendations that have been broadly represented, and not that we totally want to rewrite them or anything, but we want your feedback before we go to the school board, and just handle it very warmly.
Just before we move on, I think one of the key questions I was hoping to hear from the group tonight is where do you think these meetings need to be? Just 2 meetings, where would they, I've got concepts in my head, but I'd rather hear from the group, I guess.
Since they mainly affect.
Big enough coffee shop?
I do because the Bailey change is the biggest change. I think we do need to do one here. Yes.
I think the other one is also at Bailey, since
that was going to be
right.
Well,
yeah.
I think Bailey and Stratford are key places to have.
The tough one for me too is East too.
A third one at Bailey.
And did anybody say East or?
I feel like the East. I mean, I don't. The parents that I've heard from, that are East, don't see. I mean, have you talked
Here's
to
the pushback: is that a much bigger middle school is scary, right? So if we're going to double the size of East by moving it to Bailey, that gets scary.
Drop-off's different. I mean, it's not far away, but
yeah,
just looking at location.
So we could do 3 if everyone thinks that's what they'd prefer.
One maybe
Yeah, we can
the East
we can talk
Auditorium.
about some size issues with East also.
Just the other thought, I guess, to kind of be putting your thinking hats on to, not that we need to hear it now, but all of you have jobs and responsibilities, and it's the district's responsibility to help facilitate this meeting. I'll be happy to help present the plan with you all, but also, how do we want the feedback? How do we want to ask parents who want to provide feedback? Because with such a big group, what we need to be really cautious about is individually you feeling the burden to collect your constituent feedback. We've been on a panel so far, so you've been able to speak openly from your input. But once these public meetings happen, I think it's going to be very beneficial to have a centralized place to collect feedback, that the district can take that on, that you all understand and accept, and that you think is the best manner to collect that feedback. But then you can redirect your constituents into these channels so that then you can all be abreast of that and that we'll all get it, instead of everybody having to take that individual responsibility on.
And we can work to develop a place to do that online, if that's what everyone would like to do, is to be able to point folks to a place on the website.
I mean, I think sometimes we use even just like question cards, depending on the size of the meeting. Some people aren't comfortable with getting up and speaking, so
you mean
allow
at the
them.
meetings?
Yeah, at the meeting, having question cards. I mean, just, we don't have to flesh all that out now. Just be putting your thinking hat on, so when we get to that point, you'll know, you'll be comfortable with how that process is going to be.
Yeah, and they usually go better when we have the cards. You know, just from zoning matters all the way to education, whatever. So, perfect. Yeah, I think we.
Okay.
If you don't have anything else.
Nope. No. So Jeannie Walker's here, and she can describe much better than I can what her work is. But I know this group wanted to talk about sort of how all of you and folks that you talk with can be involved in the turnaround process at the priority schools. And so Jeannie's been working on that, and we'll share what's going on. It's good work.
So thanks for inviting me today. I'll try not to take a ton of your time. I know you guys, I think you have a time limit. I don't know. Maybe you don't have a time limit. Okay.
Yeah.
So I work under a broader umbrella of Tiny Majors Department Support Services. So that department has many, many different parts to it. Social workers, truancy, athletics, security, all these different departments, including family engagement, right? So that's my team. And so we have 2 different sort of buckets of staff that do that work. One, our family engagement, so family involvement specialists, and we have 1 per cluster. So we have 1 assigned to the Maplewood cluster, 1 assigned to the Stratford cluster. And we also have a community outreach specialist who sort of work with the teams housed in each of the clusters to ensure that they are really looking at data and working collectively to address issues that are coming up within each cluster, either student by student, cohort of students, or school-wide. And so one of the things we have 4 different ways that we work. One is we do a lot of what we call parent, I don't want to say training, but it's through the parent university model. So we have a whole portfolio of workshops that we offer schools that principals can request, or anybody in a building can request, and there's a menu of those, but we also create them as needed. So I could see here, some of the trainings that we do are around parent leadership and about learning how to facilitate meetings, how to begin like a PTO, how to get more parent involvement in your school from the parent perspective, and so we could do that here. We have a much more in-depth training that we do that we got through a grant with the National PTA. And it's a 9-week series on parent leadership, and it's more of like the advanced class, right? So you learn. So each session has a much more in-depth topic. So you'll have a whole session on what the school board does, and each class has a speaker, and in that case, it would be a school board member. We talk about how they're elected, what they do, what they don't do, what their responsibilities are. So the parents really learn really in depth different levels of power and leadership within, and how things work in the district. They learn a lot about budgets, school improvement planning, who does what in the building, what their rights and responsibilities are as parents, and there's a whole session on facilitating meetings, handling conflict within a parent group, and then they have to develop a project. So we've talked about doing a version of that parent leadership training at each of the priority schools, really in anticipation of helping them sit in an informed way on a school improvement plan or the grant sort of planning. And that's really important to us, that we don't put parents at a table where they don't feel equipped to participate. So we do have, obviously, parents that can do that, but we would like to see a broader group of parents that could do that. And so that's an option that we've talked about. The school improvement planning grant that we've received would go towards helping pay for things like childcare and food and different things like that would remove some barriers to people participating in those. So that could happen either late spring or early summer at each of those schools. So that's a possibility that we are exploring. So my family involvement specialists have been trained in doing it. We've done it at Buena Vista. We've done it at a couple of different schools. I'm drawing a blank now, but anyway, so we've done some in Antioch. So that would be a really interesting way to help parents that are interested in doing that. The other option, of course, is utilizing sort of existing PTOs that may be at each school. We have schools that don't have a formal parent structure. And so if they don't, we would help them develop such a thing if that was something they wanted to do with the principal. But the ones that exist, we could beef those up in terms of helping them understand how to utilize their own structure to engage in school improvement planning. So really our job is to increase parent capacity in that way. And in this case, we're talking more about most parents are interested in parent universities that are going to help them help their individual child. Help me understand my child's report card. Help me get ready for kindergarten. Help me get ready for middle school. Help me prepare for a parent-teacher conference. We are talking about trainings really that are parents that are interested in helping whole school improvement, if not whole cluster community improvement. So that's a different kind of lens that we have to place on these trainings for these parents. So that would be one thing we would do. The other side of that coin is we have something called Family Engagement University. And these are trainings we do for staff. And they can be a 1 hour at a faculty meeting where we talk about, before parent-teacher conferences, these are just some things you should consider. Please put data in front of parents. Don't assume that they can't talk about data with you. And just different things that we coach faculties on, to full-day trainings. We do one that's in very high demand called a poverty simulation that is very popular, and try to do those with full faculties. And so then what we would try to do is help school teams, turnaround teams, whatever we have in place here, really know how to engage parents in an authentic way, in a way that really doesn't make any assumptions about the parents that they're working with, and really come to the table ready to make, basically assuming that they bring value to the conversation around turnaround. And believe it or not all school staff feel that way, right? And so we need to really be honest about the fact that all of your parents bring value and can participate in this process. And then the other two things that we do is we work a lot with community partners to align partners to schools. If a school says, we need a one-off partner for our carnival, we will try to find sponsors in that sort of way. Or we might need a year-round partner that will come in and work in a reading clinic. And so we will have an organization or a business get volunteers. We just got one to the Belmont women's basketball team is now going to partner with Ross Early Learning Center, and they're going to come in and be reading and working with the kids. So those are the kind of things that my staff will help align. And then the last one really is the one-on-one family resource stuff. So if we have a family that's had a house fire, we have a family that is homeless, we have, you name it, whatever situation we're dealing with, we will case by case help those families with whatever needs they have. And so that's really, they're a busy group of people trying to do all of those things at once. But in terms of the priority schools and the schools in East Nashville, we're looking at really building capacity of parents to engage beyond what we already do with those schools.
Love to open it up to Q&A, but quick question, just to kind of get it going. You mentioned priority schools. Could some of these, we could roll it in the bottom 5 and the bottom 25%? I know some of them seem like they were more resource intense with the parent leadership training. That sounded very resource intense, but at least with the PTO strengthening, the family university, what do you think we could get at the 5% level and then at the 25%, bottom 25% schools?
Well, I mean, part of it really depends. In our business, it all depends on the principal and what the principal is interested in doing. And so if a principal is we will provide as much services and resources and training as they are willing to let us come in and do. And so it is a matter of finding time to be in front of faculty and finding time and space to be with parents. So, in terms of like the 9-week parent leadership thing, that's pretty labor intensive, and so we would have to really be thoughtful about that. But we also do one-off pieces of that. So that 9-week, we call it 9-week, it's really 9 chapters. You could do that in 3 Saturdays, if you had to. Those chapters can be standalone workshops. So if a school says, we want the one on facilitating a meeting and school-based budgeting, helping parents be informed in this at the table around school-based budgeting, right? We can do that sort of thing. So whatever it is that the principal feels would be most effective to help them.
But with PTO strengthening and then coaching the
Absolutely.
faculty some, that might be something that you could be it's like a one-day
Absolutely.
thing here and there. We
Absolutely.
could recommend that all those schools, you guys do some of that.
And we also do, we'll go into schools all the time. We just finished a series at Caldwell, so we will do grade level meetings with staff. So we'll sit down with a third grade team and say, let's look at your data. Let's plan a parent meeting just for third grade parents around what's happening with where the kids are, where you want them to be by the end of the year, and how can parents support that. So we've done that literally K through 4. We've had meetings with each grade level team, individualized it to that team. And I know at Jerry Baxter, we've done some great stuff with them, with Parent University and all the rest. So we like to think of ourselves as just this resource that schools, we will, whatever it is, whatever it takes to help.
For the school improvement grant, parent involvement, does it make sense to expand that to grandparents as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that is open an opportunity.
In fact, we're working right now. We just met today to talk about a couple of different things. One of them is a combination grandparent fair and sort of parent university. Basically, we have a lot of grandparents raising kids, and so it's going to be 50 forward actually. So it's going to be in combination with them and talking about what are your rights if you're not actually the legal custodian. How do we make that happen, right? Because they can't sign for things for kids, and things like that. So we'll have some folks from I think Council on Aging will come in and talk about how do you become a legal guardian and that sort of thing. But at the same time, grandparents, it's a whole new day in schools for grandparents. Let's talk about social media. Let's talk about internet use. Let's talk about report cards. Let's talk about, engaging with teachers and instruction. So, yes.
Other questions, comments?
Yeah, I'd almost like to come and sit down with you at the office and just listen to the spiel on how you. I don't mean that as a negative.
Spiel. Okay.
To listen to the game plan on how you teach principals to help parents engage, and because I've dealt with different scenarios or situations, and I think that how that comes across is important. So I'd almost like to sit down and just listen to how the school district deems a parent organization should work, versus how maybe some parents feel a parent organization should work.
And that is different at every single school.
Absolutely.
So how do you do, I heard when Angelica was speaking, she was saying that a lot of students are involved in making the decision. Is there any options for student-based learning? I know I have a 4th grader who's pretty involved, and she had a different outlook on STEM. Like she didn't, she just said, I'm not sure if I'm into science, so she really did, but I could imagine if she didn't have a parent who was there to kind of, help her decide and discuss some things with her,
right,
that she would have made a decision that she wasn't sure about,
Decision meaning choosing a school?
Or like choosing or knowing how to maneuver, how to have a discussion with your principal, with leadership, how to have a discussion with your teacher, how to talk to your school counselor, when you need to go see your school counselor, when it's a issue of problem solving between you and peers. Is that a possibility?
Well, so that is not my shop, although I fully support students being able to advocate for themselves. I think that's so important, and the younger the better. And so, our side of the coin is helping parents advocate. So we have one of our workshops that we do in that leadership workshop is role playing. So let's role play a difficult conversation with a principal. Let's role play a difficult conversation with a teacher, right? And so we have a partner, Conexión Américas is a nonprofit in town, and they have a parent program that they've been doing in our schools for 6 years, and that is the most amazing thing to see. And they have parents teaching parents, and they do role play that. They actually give them scenarios. It's really interesting, and so you learn how to advocate for your child without being adversarial, and that is actually a learned skill, right? That's not something that people can do automatically, because talking about your children all of us get very passionate, we can get upset, we can feel like we're not being heard. And so how do you make sure the principal or the teacher hears you without it becoming an emotional conversation? But students need to know how to do that too.
I'm just wondering, like, if it's family engagement, then the child is a part of the family. And if we talk to the parent, then there should be some means to talk to the student, you know, especially if the parent agrees. Sure, you can talk to them about, you know, these types of issues. Like, is there a time when that, you know, especially when you get to the middle school and high school, is there a time that you can have an after-school, you know, meeting or training for students to make these decisions? Because let's be honest, they are making these decisions for themselves.
You know, it's interesting, Antioch High School has an event next Friday called We Love Our Parents Lunch. It's really interesting, and so they are scheduling all day long, or not all day long, during like a 2-hour lunch period, parents and students signing up, registering, having lunch, and meeting one-on-one with a teacher and a counselor, and talking about students' academic performance and setting goals for the rest of the year. And so it is a student-teacher-parent conference that they've already had 40 different families sign up. Granted, Antioch's a huge school, but that's a big deal that parents are going to come in, sit down with a teacher, guidance counselor, and talk about setting goals for the year.
Every high school has an advisory time built into it. Every week for kids in small groups to have a mentor in the building that they discuss their goals and set goals with.
Right.
Jeannie, you mentioned like parents are interested in being part of the whole cluster. Have you thought, you know, the community PTOs has really taken off over here and started this whole movement. Have you thought about kind of taking that model and scaling it, you know, trying to create more of those, or have you created more of those in different areas as far as like parents that are concerned with the whole pathway or the whole cluster?
Well, you know, we have Parent Advisory Council, right, which I would say is not, I would say it has ways to go. That's my personal opinion, in terms of really having substantive conversations about whole cluster, whole community issues. It's hard, though, I think that, again, when you talk about getting a parent to step outside of, I'm thinking about my child, thinking about my school, and then thinking about my cluster. That's a really small group of parents, really. And even smaller, I'm going to talk district-wide, right? And so it's hard to get parents to come and really have deep conversations quarterly about their entire cluster unless you have sort of a lightning rod issue, which I think we have these sparks here in this community. I would love to see, it's done in different ways. Hillwood Cluster's been interesting to watch with their PAC. So each PAC meeting, a different principal and their team gets up and presents to the whole cluster about what they're doing, and it's been really interesting they almost like do a spiel, right, about this is why we're so awesome, check us out. And it's been really interesting to watch how they've decided to do, it's a PR show, take it on the road. It's been really good.
That's what we do over here. I'd be interested if y'all do get together, if there is something there, something that can be scaled a little bit. So, other questions, or we're kind of getting to time? Yeah.
What's your strategy for making sure that the parent groups and the principals know about all the resources in your department?
So we've really worked hard on that, and I would say, and we've actually trained my team on almost like a sales pitch, right, where you are going to go and you've got 30 seconds in an elevator with a principal. How are you going to let them know they really need to employ your services? Or you've got, 10 minutes in front of the parents at an open house, and you want to, that's why we have gotten one-pagers for Parent University menu of workshops, all of these different things, so they're quick and easy to understand. But there's some parents that are really savvy, how to find things, and others I know we're not reaching, but we could do a better job with.
Like, where can you find this information now?
Well, we do some of that online. Our website, at the school district website, has on the parent tab a lot of the things we do. One of the things that we do, we've actually taken off this year, that schools have sort of taken off, is Watchdogs, which is a fatherhood engagement program. So things like that, I think some of it's word of mouth and some of it is just a couple of parents in the building saying we want to get something going. But
did you say you just have one representative for the whole cluster?
For my team? Mm-hmm. Yes. But they work with people within each building. So depending on the school, some schools have a full-time family engagement person or family resource center, or they have a counselor who's very passionate about this, or an AP who really focuses on this. And it depends on what they're working on. If they're working on a transition night into 5th grade, that's one of the things we offer, is we help schools plan transition programming. So if you're a 5th grade, we have a whole packet, like a thing we do, a toolkit for helping you hold a 5th grade night for your incoming 4th graders. And we've seen some really innovative ways to do that, where fourth graders will come in, and fourth graders come in with their parents on an evening into the fifth grade, and they get a schedule of a fifth grader, and they have to, because what parents are afraid of is my kid can't go class to class in locker and bathroom. They can't do all that. They're not ready for that. So they get a schedule, and they have to go to each class, and in each classroom is a fifth grade teacher and a parent of a fifth grader, and they talk about that class and their experience, and then they go to the next class, and they have to, within that schedule, go to the bathroom and go to the library. And so they leave like this huge relief, right? Because they know, okay, it's not that far to go. This is a small fifth grade hallway. This is going to be okay. And so we help schools put that kind of thing on. It's just a matter of principals accessing resources.
Yeah, and I know to answer that question, Fuller, our front office has at least one of the one sheets in its info thing, or at least the last time I was there it did. And so, how many parents actually wander through the office when they come to pick up their kid, I don't know, but some of that information is on site for parents to access.
I will say, if you're talking about resources, when I think of resources also, we have a lot of teachers that will refer parents to us, or kids to us, or to social workers, concerned about this child made a comment, child confided X, Y, and Z, and we will go to that family or go to that child and say, hey, we have this available, that available, are you interested? So we don't wait for them to come to us always. So.
Hank, can you send us all the university docs just around in the group, just so we have everything? I think that'd be helpful.
It seems like such a wide spectrum to deal with resourcing social issues and helping a group of parents put together a PTO. That seems like a huge responsibility, a large burden on a very small group.
We don't see it as a burden.
People.
We see it as it's like, the passion of this. I have the most passionate people in the world.
But I know just from being in the Stratford cluster how many social issues there are.
Absolutely.
How much need.
We're also feeding
is in this
a lot
area,
of our students.
and how many
in general.
Right.
Yep.
So there's.
And that's a big responsibility too.
There's a lot.
It's true. We have a lot of partners that help us, though. A lot of partners that help us. You look at Foster Street, where you've been meeting, though. So my department, I have 3 people housed in that building who work with families all day long. And so we try to be really innovative. So, and mental health co-ops there, Goodwill is there. So we have lots of partners. We don't do it by ourselves.
So are you saying if 10 more principals came to you tomorrow and said, we want to implement this in our schools, you have the capacity to do that?
Yep.
So really a little bit larger on the organization. You may have mentioned this, Jenny, might not have heard everything. But we really have a cluster support team in each cluster. We have family engagement specialists, but we have social workers, attendance counselors, psychologists, other people it's a team of people who work within each cluster of schools. We don't have the resources to put a team in each school. But the cluster support team is a way that we organize that seems to be pretty effective.
Great. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Sure.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We're meeting again on the 18th, 5:30 p.m. I'd love to repeat and do Stratford if that's not a problem with.
They serving chili.
Yeah, we may not, and stay and eat chili, please. We're pushing towards our recommendations, so. I think we just need to figure out how to distill the information. It'd be nice to kind of email some stuff around before the meeting, in the next meeting, talk about our recommendations, plan for these community meetings, kind of go from there. So
we'll have a little discussion about transportation.
We should touch on it, at the beginning. Let's hit on that at the beginning with the recommendations as well. So
Fred Carr said, if you tell us what you want us to do, and we'll do it.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
He's the one that could do it.
Interesting. All right.
We want door-to-door transportation.
Yeah. Any school you want, right?
You write the check.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Stay for chili, please.